Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
So today we have Peter Belisle with us. I said it wrong. Belisle with us. And Peter, it's great to have you. We are now looking, if you're on the video YouTube version, you are seeing a structure in LA. And Peter, I'll let you describe what this is.
Yes, so Bruce, great to spend a little bit of time with you. This is the brand new Lucas Museum of Narrative Art, which is a world-class museum that is going to be opening this year, later in 2026, on September 22nd. And I've had the pleasure and the privilege of being involved as a development advisor to the museum for the last 8 years or so. And it's just great to see this project finally coming to fruition. An unbelievable world-class collection of art that George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, has owned some of these pieces for a number of years. And this will be a fantastic venue open to the public to be able to see all kinds of different categorizations of art, but all around the theme of narrative storytelling. So it's sculpture, painting, physical artwork, sculptural pieces, just really an impressive collection. So it's just really a lot of fun that just coincidentally, as we're having this conversation, we're getting closer and closer. As you can see, 174 days to opening. So a lot of things going on at the site, but it's really turned out to be just an absolutely beautiful project.
So for those of you that are on audio, this building looks a little bit like a spaceship. And it is very, how large is this building?
It's about 400,000 feet, but it has a huge city block park that is part of the podium. There's a very large subterranean garage below this park, but the park and gardens, if you will, are a material park. Like a lot of the times, those of us that have been in development for years, on day one, a park that you've built has a bunch of like really, shrubs and very small trees. This is a mature park on day one, and we've also been lucky enough to have some of these, really mature tree specimens, but that have been growing for, upwards of 8 years, and were procured early as to make sure that on opening day, the park really does look like a park and can be enjoyed by the public.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, let's switch from that. Let's switch that off and go to a little bit of history, Peter, of how you actually got into development management.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I studied undergraduate at UCLA, civil structural engineering, and I always had designs on getting into construction and development. Initially worked for a couple of construction management CMGC firms out of school, and after that went and spent a period of time at the Walt Disney Company on the development side. So developing assets for their own account, not on the theme park and resort side, but on the actual business side. So projects that I had were television sound stages, production studios, etc. A lot of fun with that. Really enjoyed it. After spending time at the Walt Disney Company, I went to work for JLL, which I was an executive at JLL for, a little over 2 decades. And
Hmm.
one of the roles that I had there was acting as president for our project and development services group for the Americas, which was a lot of fun. We had a team of probably about 2,500 individuals, and we're doing a project backlog of anywhere from 20 to 25 billion dollars a year, a project backlog. So just an absolutely great time and great experience. And then about 3 years ago, I left JLL and started up my own firm, Belle Advisors, where a big part of my business to this day is working as a development advisor for both public and private institutions. And then kind of coupling that with, also I do a fair amount of advisory work for private equity and hedge funds, that are investing in the real estate design and construction services space. So helping them with looking at mergers and acquisitions and acting as an advisor on how to structure maybe an investment in either a property technology company or real estate services companies.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Early stage companies or mature companies?
Uh, a little bit of both.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting aggregation going on right now in private equity where I guess the way to put it is that private equity has seen that there's a lot of opportunity in the construction services space, infrastructure services space. So everything from mechanical subcontractors, electrical subcontractors. I do a lot of data center work, so they kind of cross over into the space. I think a lot of private equity firms have realized that there's a lot of opportunity to merge up a number of these small and mid-sized companies, maybe either into a larger firm or do an aggregation play of a number of these companies and then rebrand them over time and look at how to optimize sharing back of house services and things like that. So it's really interesting to see this where it's kind of a new front or one of the last frontiers to really think about from an aggregation play. So a lot of activity in that space right now.
Yeah, I would not have even thought that venture capital would be interested in this world. So that's very intriguing. Although, as soon as you say data centers, I can see where that would all of a sudden bring a bunch of people together.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's just, and data centers in general, with just the boom that we're in right now related to AI is an unbelievable boom. I've worked on data center projects and helped to found our data center project management group at JLL and, been involved with data centers for over 25 years. I've never seen a velocity like we're seeing right now around data center demand. It's kind of interesting. One of the biggest problems we're seeing around data centers is finding land that has adequate power. Uh,
Ah,
these these hotter, faster chips that are related to AI, either design and or research, require a lot of power, not just for energizing them, but also on the cooling side. So, in fact, some cases we've looked at legacy data center projects that might have been 15 or 20 years ago, and they just don't have the power that would support the square footage that we'd want to build now. So, the power piece of it is almost as important as even site locational elements.
have you worked at all in Nevada at the TRIC?
No, but I know about it. It's unbelievable what there's a couple of these campus projects that are going on. Even with just a lot of the magnificent kind of Mag 7 stocks
Mm.
and locations like Texas as well that are just unbelievable scale. I mean, like projects we'd never seen before. So it's
Yeah,
really
no.
impressive.
Yeah, 100,000 acres or whatever. Yeah, just crazy size. And people are filling it up. But what can you do? Uh, so give us a little clue about what you're working on right now, other than the LA Center.
Well, yes, I'm really excited to be involved with UCSF as a development advisor on a project that is actually in kind of a dog patch area, so south of Mission Bay. That will be a new 300,000 foot clinical facility. So with medical clinical uses, it has a research incubator element to it. And one of the clinical components that's very interesting is it has a proton therapy or nuclear medicine proton therapy cancer treatment center in it, which will be really kind of a one of a kind facility and a modality, a treatment modality that there's nothing like it in the Western United States. So that project's really exciting. The university has partnered up with 5S as a developer, and I'm helping the university and representing their interests in the project. So really exciting team. We've got Webcore as a general contractor. Herzog de Meuron is the design architect, and Stantec is acting as the executive architect. So really, really good team.
So how many people do you have working for you now?
So I went from running teams as big as 2,500 people at JLL. And I really enjoy now having basically you're looking at the firm and I partner with other firms when, the need arises. So it was a lot of fun having that many people to be responsible for, but it's really nice to take and, be able to act as a an individual contributor on these exciting projects.
So how much AI are you using in your process?
It's interesting. What I find, and we had this conversation with our design and construction team on the museum recently. What's interesting is it AI has proven to be a good backdrop for when you're researching something to kind of put together a landscape on. It could be a material selection issue. It could be on, looking at, maybe a particular design challenge that you've not seen before. It's a great way to provide a backdrop to kind of stimulate some ideas and conversation. We are not really seeing it kind of act as a replacement, but really more as an augmentation tool. And I still am involved a lot. I went and obtained my MBA at the Anderson School of Business, and I still am fairly heavily involved with the school and kind of a number of different levels. And it's really exciting sometimes to mentor people that are trying to get into the real estate or development field. And one of the things I always tell people, young folks that are looking to try and enter that business, is understanding how to use AI as a tool, not as a way to completely replace what the human capital side of it is, but
Right.
knowing how to use it effectively to give you leverage is going to be really important, just as it is for a lot of other industries, right? Everybody likes to talk about the disintermediation of what's happening with AI. But I
Right.
think really the people, if you had somebody graduate, you had a child graduating college right now, the ones that are going to be successful are the ones that know how to utilize it as a tool in their toolbox versus, either ignoring it, saying, I don't want to go down that route, or just hoping that, it's gonna just go away. It's here to stay. And I think when I see it, how profound it has become to just creating this as a leverage tool, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, that is very interesting, and I think AI is at a point where it's a great tool, a great aid, but not gonna drive everything home, so to speak. So I'm curious, do you use some kind of property or project management software?
Yeah, we do it, but it's really tied to specific client requirements. Like, so,
Hmm.
there's a number of platforms out there, and really a lot of the time it's really shaped by a combination of what your client may be using, what your general contractor is using, and even what we're using for, all the way down into like BIM modeling software that's being maybe particularly mandated or dictated by what your design team is using. So it's more about the importance of the process versus being a sponsor of just one particular branded system. A lot of it too, I think, is really the pieces of it that are really about cross collaboration is so important. We were on a call earlier on the project in San Fran or for UCSF today, and being able to have a shared set of tools that we're all looking at and being able to take and monitor RFI submittal progress. It's just so much more efficient than the old days when we'd shoot around Excel spreadsheets and somebody's looking at the wrong version, and it's like, wait, there's got to be a better way to do this, so yeah.
Well, it sounds like your approach or your job, so to speak, is to keep all the parts together. You don't have to necessarily get down into the nitty-gritty well, hopefully you don't have to go there very often, but you kind of keep all the teams going in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think part of it, one of the pieces that I enjoy is bringing experience from other projects to bear on, a set of problems and coming up with solutions on a project today. And it's so interesting. The thing that I love so much about my job is, and I've been so fortunate to work on these kind of marquee projects, is you learn so much on every project, and
Mm.
you learn, you not only come across a whole series of new problems, but you're able to take and apply those solutions for those problems to future projects. I mean, the museum project was so exciting, but it was the architecture of it is so complicated, and how it was modeled, in BIM, and just, looking at the constructability around it and how to solve these type of solutions. And we were very fortunate to have the production architect sitting with us, in the job trailers and actually being there real time to help us solve a lot of these problems and just being able to, to be responsive like that. It really created some unique kind of best practices that when I look ahead to other complex projects, there's some things that are really lessons learned from there, and keeping that as kind of a rolling roster. We're doing that even now with the project team for UCSF, where, again, we mentioned, I think, early on, there's a very complex proton therapy cancer treatment modality that's extremely complex from a technology perspective. And we have collectively, all of us, the developer, the contractor, myself with the university, have been pulling together best practices of these projects that have been delivered with this technology around the world, and what's worked, what hasn't worked, cataloging these types of best practices and utilizing that to make sure that we're really putting as a team, our best foot forward, which is exciting.
That is amazing. So I would assume, having been in this world for 35 years or more, communication is key to getting everything to roll in the right direction. So keep,
100%. Yeah. No, you're
yeah,
absolutely right. And I think also, setting an expectation early on with the broader project team, there's a lot of constituencies at kind of different sides of the table. It's not even two people or two teams sitting across the table from each other.
Hmm.
It's a really dynamic process, especially for a complex project like this, where really thinking about, we also, I had advocated, and we did a facilitated session with a third party facilitator early on, making sure that we were aligned around overall objectives. What does the end game look like? What does success look like? And it's interesting. You can come in with a lot of assumptions and say, well, I'm sure everybody has the same answer. And they don't. They don't. And that doesn't mean that there's any wrong answers. But I've always found on large complex projects that doing some kind of a third party facilitated session to have a fresh set of eyes looking at, okay, how is this going to work? And thinking about these different constituencies, and sometimes there are competing interests, and that's if you acknowledge these type of things and you talk about it, it's a lot better than just pretending that there isn't that case.
Wow, that is very interesting. I had never thought about having a facilitation up front, because that seems like that would be great, because invariably in a lot of construction projects, development projects, you get an adversarial approach, and that just kind of destroys everything.
Yeah, it does. And with as much complexity as we have on this project, a very high level of expectations by all of us about the quality we want in the project, a very technologically challenging project. We don't have time for that. It's just, at the end
Yeah.
of the day, success is going to be defined by getting across the finish line with a high quality project that's under, it's on schedule and under budget, and that's shared by all parties. And we've really tried to take and make that very clear to everybody, that just, save your energy for solutioning, not for trying to turn on each other.
Yeah, no, and that can, tank a project pretty quickly if people get in a bad way. But invariably there are fights and disagreements and so forth. But part of that is being able to bring that all together and make everybody work in the same direction. And I
That's
suspect
right.
that's a great deal of what you do.
That's right. That's exactly right. And it's something that I've taken from the larger projects that I've worked on, and I think back to the ones that have been the most successful, and it's where you've kind of laid those ground rules that, like, and we're also going to talk about the tough stuff. I always joke with my team is that we want to know bad news, and we want to know it frequently and early, meaning, like, we don't want to be sweeping things under the rug, hoping that it goes away, and then you know launch it at people at the 11th hour. It's much
Yeah,
better to say, hey, look, this is a really tough problem. I want to get on the table right now.
it costs well, it costs way more in the end if you don't catch it early.
That's
So,
right.
no,
That's
I
right.
can see where that's very valuable. So, what's on the plate for the future?
It's interesting. I think Well, it's great to see the museum wrapping up. I'm really excited that we are, right now we're just about bottomed out on excavation for the UCSF project
Hmm.
for Block 2, so this is going to be a really great project to be involved in. And that's going to definitely, consume a lot of time and effort over the next, the coming years. It is interesting to see, like we talked about on some of these just the investment community's interest around what we're seeing with this kind of intersection of just a new level of interest in these infrastructure services, that confluence of that, which is kind of what we were calling kind of property technology tools, and then this kind of insert AI on top of it all. I think we're in for some really fundamental changes on how we see real estate being conducted over the next 5 years. And I think it's going to have a material impact on brokerage firms, capital markets activity, debt and equity raising, all the way through to design and construction and facility management. There's not going to be any of those stones. If I kind of say the three legs of the table are, facility management, CapEx project development, and then transactional services, all three of those legs of the table are going to be materially shifted by what's going to be happening with just this confluence of property technology tools and really just the insertion of using AI as a leverage point. So it's going to be an interesting time. It's going to be a really interesting time.
Have you run across the tokenization of real estate at all in this process?
Yeah. Yes, it's interesting. I've had some clients in Southeast Asia that have really been, in particular, very interested in this. And, conceptually, I think this idea of using as an example blockchain for, looking at sanctity of title, right, over
Right.
time is an extremely interesting idea. The currency piece, I think, um, has its own set of issues. It's really around adoption. It's not just a real estate issue, like as an example, using Bitcoin or some other kind of digital token for processing payments, et cetera. I think there's a lot of commerce that's going to have to think about adoption of that. The blockchain thing, though, is very interesting when you think about title, because title
Mm.
is it's such an important part of the real estate transaction process. And it really, you know, I guess the best way to put it is that it is hard enough to do from an analog perspective. I think there's a lot of improvement we could see, as we think about how to digitally do that, and just this concept of blockchain, I think, and it intersecting with title, I think over time is really, really interesting. So I almost think that we may see adoption of that intersection probably even before we really see broader adoption of using any kind of, digital currency for
Mm.
transactions.
Mm.
But it feels like the commerce bit, whether it be Bitcoin or Ethereum or what have you, that the tokenization and kind of the commerce piece of it seems to kind of flare up and be really hot, and then it kind of dies down.
Right,
And I
right,
think some
right,
of it almost seems to be in sequence with when you see valuation of Bitcoin run up like to 100, 120,000 a
right.
coin, and now and then it dropped down to the 60s and 70,000 range. And it feels like it's peak and valleying. I don't think it's going away. I think there's one of the things I hear from investor clients that I work with is there still is a lot of uneasiness about the security of it, meaning
Right,
that just
right.
there's a confidence factor that I don't think is out in the broader investment community as of yet. People get the concept. It's not that it's lost on people, but I think again the blockchain title and intersection, I think we'll probably see adoption of that first.
Yeah, and at some point, the government has to step in and regulate. So that once maybe that happens, it'll come together a little quicker, but who knows? We'll see how
Yeah.
quickly that goes. Well, I think we could talk for probably another couple days about development and different issues involved, but let's pause for now and maybe come back again as UCSF gets a little further down the road. That'd be fun to talk about.
Fantastic. Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate the time today.
So, Peter, where can people get a hold of you?
Uh, Probably my website is the best, belconadvisors.com, and happy to help in any way I can.
That'd be great. Well, let's stay in touch.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.